The breeze whipped my hair across my face as the cherry blossoms rained down around us. I looked over at Nolan, taking in his chiseled jawline and kind eyes. He had one hand rested gently on the back of my wheelchair as he pushed me along the winding path in the park. "It's so beautiful here," I said. "Thank you for bringing me." "Of course, darling," Nolan replied, leaning down to plant a soft kiss on my forehead. "I'd do anything for you, you know that." I smiled up at him, my heart swelling. After the accident that left me paralyzed, Nolan had been my rock. He took care of my every need, catering to my wheelchair, helping me bathe, making sure I took my medications. I didn't know what I would do without him. We continued through the park, the pavement smooth beneath my wheelchair. Up ahead, the path sloped downwards towards a small bridge crossing a stream. "Oh, look, the bridge," I said. "Let's stop for a moment once we cross." "Of course," Nolan said, his voice suddenly tense. As we started down the slope, he pivoted my chair sideways. Before I could ask what he was doing, he leaned down, his lips nearly touching my ear. "I'm bankrupt," he whispered harshly. "I've blown through your inheritance. I need that life insurance money if we're going to live comfortably." My heart dropped into my stomach as words registered. "What are you saying?" I gasped. "I'm so sorry about this, darling." With that, he shoved my wheelchair forward with immense force. I screamed as I hurtled down the steep slope, bracing myself as the wheelchair hit the bottom and flipped over, tossing me onto the hard ground. Sharp pain radiated through my body and my vision blurred. "Nolan!" I tried to shout, but it came out as a whimper. I heard his footsteps crunching on the gravel as he approached. When he leaned over me, his face was a mask of anguish. "Oh my God, Alara!" he cried. "I'm so sorry. I lost control of your wheelchair. Here, let me get you back in." As he righted the wheelchair, disbelief flooded through me. He was pretending that this was an accident. He scooped me up and gently placed me back in the seat, his brows knitted together in feigned worry. I scanned the area wildly, but we were alone. "What have you done?" I choked out, barely able to get the words out past the pain in my ribs. "Shh," he soothed. "Try not to move. You might have broken something. I'm going to call an ambulance." As he pretended to dial his phone, I saw a flash of panic cross his face. His plan had gone horribly wrong. He knelt down next to me again, taking my hand in his. "Just hang on, baby. Help is coming. I promise I'll take care of you." The false affection in his voice made me want to vomit. Hot tears spilled down my cheeks as I realized the man I loved had tried to kill me. The steady beep of the heart monitor greeted me as I blinked open my eyes. I was in a hospital room, my body aching. Nolan sat in a chair next to the bed, his leg heavily bandaged. He looked up as I stirred, relief washing over his face. "Oh, thank God you're awake," he gushed, grasping my hand. "I was so worried." My pulse quickened as memories came flooding back. The wheelchair careening down the hill, Nolan's cold confession, his botched attempt to kill me. I yanked my hand away. "Don't touch me," I hissed. Nolan drew back, feigning confusion. "Alara, what's wrong?" "You pushed me down that hill. You wanted me dead for the insurance money," I accused. Nolan's mouth fell open. "What?" "No, it was an accident. I would never hurt you, Alara. I tried to stop the wheelchair, but it went out of control. I jumped down the slope after you, but my leg got caught between the wheelchair spokes as I tried to stop your fall. I'm so sorry I couldn't prevent you from getting hurt." I studied his face, searching for any hint of deception, but found only earnest concern. "The doctors said you have a concussion," Nolan continued. "You must have imagined what happened due to the head trauma." Doubt crept into my mind. Could I have imagined it? My memories from that day were hazy. And now Nolan was injured too. I glanced at his bandaged leg, guilt replacing the suspicion. I'm sorry," I stammered. "I must be confused." Nolan squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It's okay. I'm just glad you're all right." Over the next few days, as my injuries healed, Nolan doted on me relentlessly. He fluffed my pillows, fed me soup, and held my hand when the pain meds wore off. His unwavering devotion made me feel foolish for ever questioning his intentions. But as the weeks passed, small things seemed off. Nolan became obsessed with money, poring over our accounts and insurance policies. He insisted on extravagant home modifications to accommodate my wheelchair, urging me to pay for them with my inheritance. One night, as I wheeled into the bedroom, Nolan slammed his laptop shut quickly. "What are you looking at?" I asked. "Oh, nothing important," he said, avoiding eye contact. While he was in the shower, I opened the laptop and accessed the browser history. My heart sank as I saw searches for how to increase your spouse's life insurance and big payouts for accidental deaths. Nolan hadn't been searching for accident victims to help. He was researching how to profit from my hypothetical accidental death. Bile rose in my throat as I finally accepted the truth. The devoted caregiver routine was an act to keep me under his control. The man I loved was trying to murder me. Over the next few weeks, I settled into a new normal. The doctors said my paralysis was permanent, so Nolan dutifully catered to my needs. But his mask slipped more each day. He obsessed over my inheritance, insisting I use it to convert our home into a wheelchair paradise. Meanwhile, he splurged on golf clubs, TVs, and gadgets. One night at dinner, he brought it up again. "Alara, I really think we should overhaul the entryway and widen the door frames downstairs. We need to make this house accessible for you." I pushed my food around my plate, anxiety churning in my gut. "Those renovations will deplete the remainder of my inheritance. Can't we just make do?" Nolan frowned, a flash of anger in his eyes. "But don't you want to be comfortable and self-sufficient? This inheritance is meant to be used on you." I couldn't tell him the truth, that I was preserving those funds to escape someday. "Let's just discuss it later," I said weakly, hoping to placate him. After dinner, I went upstairs and discovered Nolan had installed a new safe in our closet. He never mentioned it, and it was already locked. What was he hiding? A few nights later, Nolan left his email open on my laptop. My eyes fixed on one message from an insurance company with the subject line, "Policy Upgrade Request." Hands trembling, I opened it. Nolan had asked to increase my life insurance and add an accidental death payout. When I confronted him, he insisted it was just to provide for me in case of tragedy. But I knew it was premeditation. The final straw came a week later when I overheard Nolan on the phone scheduling a lavish housekeeping service. We didn't need it, but he seemed hell-bent on draining my inheritance with frivolous spending. After he hung up, I wheeled into the kitchen and tossed my checkbook onto the counter. "I'll be handling my own finances going forward," I informed him coldly. Nolan's facade fully slipped, his face contorting in anger. "How dare you? That money is as much mine as it is yours." "It's my inheritance," I shot back, "and I'm done letting you blow it." Nolan advanced on me, his voice a low snarl. "You ungrateful bitch. After everything I've done for you." Adrenaline coursed through me. "The jig is up, Nolan. I won't let you steal my inheritance while you plot my murder." Rage blazed in his eyes, but he quickly masked it. "Don't be ridiculous," he sneered. "I'll never understand your paranoia. But fine, manage your own money. It doesn't change my love and devotion." His duplicity infuriated me further, but I held my tongue. I needed to protect my finances at all costs until I could find a way out. Over the next few weeks, money became a battleground in our home. I took over the finances, carefully tracking every penny. When Nolan demanded I hire his lavish housekeeping service, I refused. "We don't need it," I said firmly. "I can handle the cleaning." Nolan's face darkened. "But in your condition." "I'm fine," I cut him off. "We're not wasting money." After that, our arguments escalated. Nolan increasingly spent money behind my back, on expensive takeout when I cooked simple meals, new electronics, anything he desired. One day, I came home to find he had purchased a $3,000 Tempur-Pedic mattress without consulting me. "Return it now," I demanded. "Why are you being so controlling?" he shot back. "I'm just trying to make our home nicer for you." "Bullshit," I spat. "You're bleeding our accounts dry, trying to spend my inheritance before I cut you off." Nolan's expression contorted in rage. For a moment, I thought he might hit me, but he quickly smoothed his face into a mask of polite concern. "Alara, I'm worried about you," he said gently. "This obsession with money isn't healthy. You know I just want what's best for you." I wanted to scream at his pathetically transparent manipulation, but I held myself in check. Over the next week, small amounts of cash began disappearing from my purse. $20 here, $50 there. I knew Nolan was taking it. Meanwhile, the utilities and credit card bills skyrocketed without explanation. One night I logged into our accounts and realized why. Nolan had increased the thermostat to 85 degrees, changed our cable package to premium channels, and added himself as an authorized user to my credit card. The The next morning, I changed the thermostat back and called the cable company to downgrade our plan. When Nolan realized what I'd done, he cornered me in the kitchen. "How dare you make changes without consulting me?" he bellowed. I refused to cower. "I'm correcting your frivolous spending. You're bleeding me dry." Nolan slammed his fist on the counter. "That's my money, too. You don't get to control everything." "It's my inheritance," I shouted back. "I see exactly what you're doing, trying to drain that money, but I won't let you get away with it." Nolan stepped closer, looming over me. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "That money is the only reason I'm stuck playing your little wheelchair nursemaid." I recoiled at his words, my worst fears confirmed. Our relationship was nothing but a ruse designed to steal my inheritance. "Get away from me," I snarled. "We're done." I wheeled my chair backwards from him, my heart pounding with rage and adrenaline. The man I loved was gone. All that remained was a manipulating thief trying to drive me to bankruptcy or death. But I wouldn't back down or surrender my independence. Not to him, not to anyone. The battle lines were drawn. After our blow-up, I stopped speaking to Nolan altogether. The loving facade had slipped away, exposing his deceit. Now we coexisted in tense silence, speaking only when necessary. I continued scrutinizing our accounts, noticing strange inconsistencies. Gas and grocery expenditures were double what they should have been. When I asked Nolan about it, he got evasive. "I've just been driving more for errands," he muttered, "and groceries are expensive lately." I knew he was lying and pocketing the extra cash, but I had no proof. Suspicions gnawed at me. Where was he driving? Was he seeing someone else? I decided to find out. I called a private investigator and explained my situation. 2 days later, I received a large envelope in the mail. Hands shaking, I opened it to find photos of Nolan embracing a woman in front of a nice suburban home, captioned with an address. Bile rose in my throat as I realized the truth. Nolan had a secret family. Fury coursed through me. All the manipulation and lies weren't just about money. He was living a double life. I wanted to confront him right away, but I waited. I needed more proof before initiating the inevitable divorce. A few days later, the investigator provided bank records indicating Nolan had purchased the other home outright and was funneling money into a joint account with the other woman. Her name was Celia. Armed with evidence, I decided to confront Nolan at the hospital where he volunteered, a smokescreen for his deceit. As I wheeled into the hospital lobby, I spotted Nolan at the front desk flirting with a nurse. Before he saw me, I called out loudly, "Hey, Nolan, how's Celia doing?" Nolan's head whipped around, his face draining of color when he saw me. He quickly masked his shock with feigned confusion. "Who?" he stammered. I threw the envelope of evidence onto the desk. Photos and bank records spilled out. "Save it!" I spat. "I know about your little wifey across town. Did you really think you could get away with it?" Nolan glared at me coldly. "You don't know what you're talking about. This is absurd." I shook my head in disgust. "The jig is up, Nolan. I'm filing for divorce. Have fun splitting your assets between 2 households." I wheeled my chair away, Nolan calling after me desperately. But I didn't stop. The time for mercy was over. Over the next few days, I met with lawyers to initiate divorce proceedings, documenting Nolan's infidelity and financial deceit. I wanted to ruin him. Soon after, I sat Nolan down at home. "Here are your options," I told him icily. "Agree to a divorce with 0 spousal support, letting me keep 100% of my inheritance, or I'll make sure every one of your friends and family knows exactly what a cheating, swindling scumbag you are." Nolan pleaded with me, but I refused to back down. The man I loved was gone. In his place was a manipulative stranger who needed to pay. After I presented the evidence, Nolan had no choice but to agree to my terms. The divorce was swift and brutal, leaving him financially devastated. I walked away free, my inheritance intact, ready to begin a new chapter away from my lying, cheating ex-husband. What awaited me was unclear, but it had to be better than the nightmare I'd endured. In the months after the divorce, I focused on recovery and adapting to my new normal. My lawyer ensured I received a generous alimony, allowing me to afford live-in care. Though my paralysis persisted, my new doctor encouraged me to stay positive. "Your condition is still evolving," he assured me. "With rehabilitation, you may regain functionality." His optimism lifted my spirits. For the first time since the accident, I had hope. During one appointment, Dr. Fields reviewed my records closely, his brow furrowing. "Let's do some fresh scans," he said. The next day, I received an urgent call from Dr. Fields. "You need to come in immediately," he said gravely. "There are developments." My pulse quickened anxiously as I wheeled into his office. His expression was grim. "What is it?" I asked shakily. "The scans show your spinal cord damage is treatable," he said. "Your previous physician failed to detect this. With surgery, you could walk again." I reeled in shock. "What? But my ex-husband said my paralysis was permanent. Are you saying it's reversible?" Dr. Fields nodded. "Given proper treatment, your prognosis is very good. I believe your previous doctor misinterpreted the scans. Your ex likely concealed this from you." The revelation hit me like a freight train. Nolan had lied to keep me in a wheelchair, dependent on him. Fury boiled up inside me. "That bastard!" I exploded. "He made me believe I'd never walk again. He wanted me helpless so he could control me and access my money." "I'm very sorry," Dr. Fields said sympathetically. "Unfortunately, traumatic spinal cord injuries are often misdiagnosed. But the good news is, we can correct this. I'd like to schedule surgery right away." Overwhelmed with emotion, I broke down in tears. For months, I believed I'd spend my life in a wheelchair at the mercy of my lying, cheating ex-husband. But now a chance at freedom stood before me. The night before surgery, I met Nolan at a cafe at his desperate request. He begged me to take him back, claiming he'd changed. "Did you know my paralysis was reversible?" I demanded. "Did you keep it from me?" Nolan's silence was damning. Seething with rage, I slapped him hard across the face. "You soulless monster! You made me believe I was trapped when I could have walked away from you. Well, tomorrow I'm getting surgery so I can dance on your grave someday. I pray I never see you again." I left Nolan crying at the table, his pathetic apologies echoing behind me. The time for mercy and forgiveness had passed. Tomorrow, a new beginning awaited me. The surgery was a success. In the difficult weeks of recovery and rehabilitation that followed, spite fueled me. I imagined trampling over Nolan's broken body as I reclaimed my strength, vowing he'd never rob me of independence again. On the day I took my first solo steps, tears of joy and relief streamed down my face. I was free at last, ready to walk into a new life on my own terms. Nolan had failed. My backbone remained unbroken. In the weeks after my surgery, I wasted no time seeking final vengeance against Nolan. Legally, financially, I wanted to ruin him completely. I met with my lawyer, providing documentation of Nolan's lies about my medical prognosis. We incorporated it into the divorce proceedings to show premeditation and abuse. Nolan wouldn't just lose money in the split, his reputation would be destroyed. "You have ample grounds for additional damages," my lawyer said. "We can sequester his assets and income sources. He won't have a cent left when we're through with him." "Good," I replied coldly. "Take everything." I realized Nolan's bank fraud likely extended beyond just me. I contacted his employer and provided evidence that he had embezzled from client accounts. They immediately opened an investigation, alerting the authorities. Nolan desperately tried to convince me not to expose him further. He even had the audacity to suggest reconciliation. "Alara, haven't you punished me enough?" He pleaded on the phone. "I know I made mistakes, but we can still repair this. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." "The only mistake I made was ever trusting you," I spat back. "You tried to steal my inheritance and leave me helpless. There's no coming back from that." I hung up, feeling re-energized in my mission to obliterate him. The next day, I called his half-sister, Layla, who he always clashed with. I told her everything, from the infidelity to the financial deceit. "I knew he was selfish, but this is unbelievable," she fumed. "What a wretched snake. He's dead to me. I'll make sure everyone knows what a vile pig he is." In the weeks that followed, Nolan's life unraveled spectacularly. Friends and family shunned him. He lost his job once the fraud was exposed. Even Celia kicked him out once she learned what he did to me, disgusted by his abhorrent behavior. The divorce finalized with me receiving 80% of our shared assets plus permanent alimony payments, money he no longer had. He'd be financially ruined for years. My lawyer called one final time. "It's done," he said with satisfaction. "Your ex-husband is destitute. His reputation is shredded. You won't be hearing from him again anytime soon." A surge of relief and joy coursed through me. The bitter seeds I'd sown had bloomed into Nolan's complete destruction. He was finally reaping what he deserved, and I was forever free from his poisonous hold on my life. The day my divorce from Nolan was finalized, I walked out of the courthouse with my head held high, the sunlight warming my face. The settlement had been everything I wanted. Nolan was left penniless and alone, forced to start anew with nothing but his wretched self. In the months that followed, I reveled in my freedom and independence. I returned to work, reconnected with old friends, traveled to places I'd always dreamed of seeing. Whenever despair crept in, I repeated my mantra, "Nolan has no power over you now." My new therapist helped me process the emotional trauma I'd endured. "It's important you don't dwell on anger," she counseled gently. "Focus your energy on healing so you can fully embrace this new chapter of your life." I took her advice to heart, channeling my energy into constructive pursuits that enriched my life. I volunteered at a women's shelter, helping those escaping abusive situations. It strengthened my resolve to never again ignore red flags in a relationship. On my birthday a few months later, my friends threw a party celebrating my freedom. As we raised our glasses, Sarah made a toast. Here's to Alara, for her resilience, courage, and for shattering the chains of her miserable marriage. No one deserves this fresh start more than her. Their cheers filled me with newfound hope. The old Alara, helpless, naive, trapped, was gone. A wiser, stronger woman had taken her place. Slowly I began dating again. After some duds, I met Adam, a kind divorcee and single father. While affection bloomed between us, I took it slow, keeping healthy boundaries. "I'm so glad you're being cautious," Sarah told me. "After everything you've endured, you deserve someone who treats you like the queen you are." While Adam was nothing like Nolan, trusting again didn't come easily. But in time, as his sincerity was proven, my walls came down, brick by brick. One night, as we strolled in the park, I paused under a canopy of twinkling lights strung between the trees. Here, surrounded by the beauty of new beginnings, my heart opened once more. When Adam proposed several months later, I accepted joyfully. While shadows of the past still lurked, the flame burning inside me was stronger. I was prepared for whatever lay ahead, holding fast to hope. On my second wedding day, I marveled at the new chapters life offers, even after devastation. With grace, courage, and perseverance, dormant seeds of joy still blossom in time. As I walked down the aisle on Adam's arm, tears pricked my eyes. My broken spirit had proven resilient. Love and vitality now stretched brightly before me. While Nolan's betrayal nearly extinguished my light, my inner inferno ultimately raged too strong to suffocate. I am more than a victim or survivor. I am the master of my fate, and my greatest triumphs still await. In the hushed stillness of our bedroom, the words fell from Mark's lips like a guillotine's blade. "You should go to Hawaii by yourself." His voice, devoid of warmth, sliced through the air, severing the last thread of hope I clung to. My name is Emily Carter. At 30, I had believed I found stability in Mark Anderson, my partner of 6 years. But tonight, the mask fell, revealing the ugly truth. I stood there, a mix of disbelief and burgeoning fury coursing through me. "Are you serious, Mark?" My voice barely rose above a whisper. "Our honeymoon is tomorrow, and you say this?" Mark avoided my gaze, his fingers nervously drumming on the kitchen counter. "I can't hide it anymore, Em. I've been seeing someone else." The confession hit me like a tidal wave, yet in the oddest way, it made sense. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the growing distance between us. How could I have been so blind? Who is she? The question escaped my lips, a part of me not wanting to know. "It doesn't matter. What matters is, I can't go with you." His nonchalant dismissal of our years together ignited a fire within me. The pain of betrayal was acute, but beneath it lay an ember of rage, fanned into life by his callousness. "You're choosing her over me, over us?" I fought to keep my voice steady. Mark sighed, a sound that spoke of annoyance rather than remorse. "I guess I am." The starkness of his admission was a slap in the face. 6 years of love, companionship, and shared dreams, all reduced to nothing in a single conversation. "Fine," I said, my voice laced with a coldness I didn't know I possessed. "Enjoy your new life, Mark. I hope she's worth it." I turned on my heel and strode to our bedroom, each step fueled by a growing determination. If Mark thought he could discard me so easily, he was sorely mistaken. The pain he inflicted tonight wouldn't go unanswered. As I packed my suitcase, my mind raced. The honeymoon to Hawaii, a trip meant for two, now a solitary venture. A bitter laugh escaped me. Perhaps this was the universe's twisted way of granting me freedom. The night wore on, the silence of our apartment punctuated by the sound of my packing. Mark didn't come to the bedroom, nor did I expect him to. The man I loved or thought I loved was a stranger now. By dawn, my suitcase stood ready by the door, a symbolic severance of my ties with Mark. As I looked around the room, a room that once harbored dreams of a shared future, I felt a resolve solidify within me. Mark Anderson, you will regret this night. This isn't just a trip to Hawaii anymore. It's the beginning of your downfall. As the plane soared towards Hawaii, I, Emily Carter, sat gazing at the cloud-strewn sky, my thoughts a tumultuous storm. The seat beside me, meant for Mark, stood as a glaring reminder of the betrayal that had set me on this journey. In the confined space of the airplane, memories of Mark and me swirled around, mocking me with their sweetness turned sour. I remembered our first meeting, the laughter-filled dates, the day he proposed. Each memory, once cherished, now felt like shards of glass piercing my heart. But amidst the pain, a plan was taking shape. A plan not just of moving on, but of ensuring Mark felt a fraction of the pain he had inflicted on me. It was not just about revenge, it was about justice. The flight attendant's voice jolted me back to reality. "Would you like anything to drink, ma'am?" "Just water, thank you," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. As she moved away, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "I see you're still going to Hawaii," his text read, a trace of accusation in his words. I typed back, my fingers steady. "Yes, Mark, you made your choice, and I've made mine." "You're being dramatic. We can talk about this when you're back," he replied, the audacity of his message igniting my anger further. "There's nothing left to talk about. Enjoy your life with her." I hit send and turned off my phone. I wasn't going to let Mark disrupt my thoughts any longer. As the plane descended into Hawaii, a plan crystallized in my mind. I would use this trip not just for healing, but to set the stage for Mark's comeuppance. He would learn that actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences strike where it hurts the most. I checked into the hotel, a beautiful beachfront property that should have been the setting for our honeymoon. Now it was the backdrop for the unraveling of my former life and the weaving of a new narrative. That evening, as the Hawaiian sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, I sat on the beach, my phone in hand. It was time to initiate my plan. I began with a simple post on social media, a picture of the sunset with a caption that hinted at new beginnings and unexpected turns. The post was ambiguous, but I knew it would stir curiosity among our friends and family. I wanted Mark to feel the eyes of our shared world on him, questioning, doubting. It was the first step in showing him that his actions would not remain hidden in the shadows. I spent the next few days exploring Hawaii, each activity a bittersweet experience. Kayaking, hiking, lounging on the beach, I did it all, documenting my solo journey on social media, my posts a mix of subtle jabs and overt displays of my newfound independence. One evening, as I dined alone in a cozy restaurant, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark's sister, Laura. "Emily, are you okay? Your posts seem off. Is everything all right with you and Mark?" I stared at the message, a part of me feeling guilty for worrying her. But this was a necessary part of my plan. Mark's facade had to crumble, and it had to start from within his circle. "Hey, Laura, thanks for checking in. Let's just say life has thrown me some unexpected curves. I'll explain more when I'm back. Hope you're well." As I sent the message, I knew it would set the rumor mill in motion. Laura, caring and concerned, would undoubtedly share her worries with others. Mark's betrayal, once a painful stab in my heart, was now the weapon I wielded with precision. In the days that followed, I felt a transformation within me. With each post, each step I took alone in Hawaii, I was shedding the skin of the woman who loved and trusted Mark Anderson. In her place stood someone stronger, fiercer, and ready to ensure that karma was not just a concept, but a reality that Mark would soon face. The Hawaiian sun cast its warm glow over the ocean, a stark contrast to the cold resolve in my heart. Emily Carter, once a believer in fairy tale endings, now played the lead in a tale of deceit and retribution. As I sipped my coffee at a seaside cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. His words, filled with feigned concern, only fueled my resolve. "Emily, we need to talk. I'm worried about you." With a wry smile, I texted back, "There's nothing to worry about, Mark. I'm enjoying Hawaii, just like you're probably enjoying your time with her." His quick response, laced with frustration, didn't surprise me. "This is ridiculous, Em. You're blowing this out of proportion." "Am I?" I typed, my fingers moving deftly across the screen. "Or maybe you're just beginning to realize the consequences of your actions." I hit send and turned off my phone, unwilling to let Mark's words disrupt the plan I had meticulously crafted. The cafe's serene ambiance provided the perfect backdrop for plotting my next move. It was time for Mark to feel the sting of betrayal, just as I had. Over the next few days, I executed my plan with precision. I contacted a lawyer to start the legal separation process and gathered evidence of Mark's infidelity. Every step I took was a calculated move to dismantle the life we had built together, piece by piece. One evening, as I strolled along the beach, I paused to watch a couple laughing together by the water's edge. A pang of sadness hit me, but it was quickly replaced by a surge of empowerment. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the architect of my own destiny. I made my way back to the hotel and logged onto my laptop. It was time to take my plan public. I drafted a post, a beautifully worded piece that spoke of new beginnings and the courage to walk away from what no longer served me. The post was cryptic, yet its underlying message was clear. I was moving on from Mark, and I was doing it with grace and strength. Within minutes of hitting post, the responses flooded in. Words of encouragement, support, and even curiosity about what had prompted such a change. Among the sea of comments, one caught my eye. It was from a mutual friend, asking if everything was okay between me and Mark. I replied, my words carefully chosen to fuel the speculation without revealing too much. Life has a way of revealing truths we never expected. Mark and I are figuring things out. As I closed my laptop, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The seeds of doubt were planted, and soon they would sprout, entangling Mark in a web of his own making. The following day, as I prepared to leave Hawaii, I felt a mix of emotions. The island had been a sanctuary, a place where I rediscovered my strength, but it was also the starting point of my journey towards justice. As the plane ascended, leaving the Hawaiian shores behind, I looked out the window, my thoughts clear and focused. Mark's betrayal had set me on this path, but it was my own resilience that would see me through. I was returning home, not as the broken-hearted fiancée, but as a woman reborn from the ashes of her past. Mark Anderson's day of reckoning was just beginning. Back in my hometown, the familiarity of the streets did little to soothe the tumult in my heart. The plane's descent had been a metaphorical landing back into the reality of my shattered life. But Emily Carter was no longer the same woman who had boarded that flight to Hawaii. She was now a woman on a mission. The first thing I did upon returning was to visit my lawyer. The office, with its sterile, professional ambiance, was a stark reminder of the legal battle that lay ahead. But I was ready. "Miss Carter, I've reviewed the evidence you sent over. We have a strong case for infidelity," the lawyer stated, his tone clinical. I nodded, my resolve unwavering. I want to ensure that the divorce settlement reflects the gravity of his betrayal. "We'll do everything we can," he assured me. As I left the office, my phone rang. It was Mark. His name on the screen no longer stirred feelings of love but of disdain. "Emily, where the hell are you?" Mark's voice was laced with anger and confusion. "I'm taking care of things, Mark. Something you should have thought of before cheating," I retorted, my voice calm, yet icy. "This is crazy, Em. You're overreacting," he shot back. "Overreacting? No, Mark. I am reacting appropriately to a man who thought he could have his cake and eat it too," I said, my words sharp. There was a pause, and I could almost hear the cogs turning in his deceitful mind. "Let's just talk about this. We can fix it," he pleaded, a note of desperation creeping into his voice. "There's nothing left to fix, Mark. You broke it beyond repair," I said and hung up. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. I reached out to our mutual friends, subtly revealing the truth behind our separation. The news spread like wildfire, painting Mark as the villain he was. I also took to social media, posting pictures and updates that showcased my newfound independence. Each post was a carefully crafted jab at Mark's ego, a public display of my resilience and his downfall. But the true masterstroke came when I decided to sell the items we had bought together. The car, the furniture, the little trinkets that symbolized our life as a couple, all were put up for sale. It was a clear message to Mark. Our shared life was being dismantled, piece by piece. The day Mark found out about the sale, his reaction was explosive. He called, his voice a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You're selling our things?" "What the hell, Emily? They're my things, Mark, and I'm reclaiming my life, one piece at a time," I replied, my tone unwavering. "This is insane. You're destroying everything we had," he accused. "We had nothing, Mark. You saw to that when you decided to cheat," I said, and ended the call. As I lay in bed that night, the silence of my apartment was a stark reminder of the solitude that now defined my life. But there was also a sense of empowerment, a realization that with each passing day, I was moving further away from the pain and closer to a future of my own making. Mark Anderson had thought he could break me, but in his betrayal, he had unwittingly forged a stronger, more determined Emily Carter, a woman who would not rest until she had her due. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the city as I, Emily Carter, walked through the streets with a newfound purpose. The air felt different, charged with the electricity of impending change. Today was not just another day. It was the day I would set the final act of my plan into motion. I arrived at a quaint cafe, the perfect spot to meet with an old friend and a crucial ally in my scheme against Mark. As I sipped my coffee, waiting, I reflected on how far I had come. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it was now overshadowed by a fierce determination. "Emily, it's been too long," greeted Lisa, a mutual friend of Mark and me, and unknowingly, a key player in my plan. "Lisa, thank you for meeting me," I said, my voice tinged with feigned distress. "What's going on, Em? You've seemed off lately," Lisa inquired, her concern evident. I took a deep breath, ready to spin the narrative. "It's Mark. I found out he's been unfaithful. I'm devastated, Lisa." The shock on Lisa's face was genuine. "Mark? But he always seemed so devoted to you." "That's what I thought too. But he's been seeing someone else behind my back," I said, letting a tear slip for effect. Lisa reached out, her hand clasping mine. "I'm so sorry, Emily. How can I help?" "Just be there for me, Lisa, and maybe keep this between us. I don't want to cause a scene. I just need support right now," I said, knowing full well that Lisa's nature wouldn't allow her to stay silent. "Of course, Emily. You can count on me," she assured me. As we parted ways, I knew Lisa would spread the news, igniting the flames of my revenge. She was the perfect unwitting messenger, her social connections a network through which the story of Mark's betrayal would travel fast. Over the next few days, I watched as the effects of my carefully crafted narrative began to unfold. Our mutual friends started to distance themselves from Mark, their social media interactions with him dwindling. Whispers of his infidelity spread, tainting his reputation. Meanwhile, I continued to present myself as the wronged yet dignified ex-fiancé. My social media posts were a blend of subtle hints at my personal turmoil and showcases of my newfound independence. Each post was a calculated move in the intricate chess game I was playing with Mark's facade. Then came the day when I learned that Mark had been passed over for a promotion at work, a direct result of the rumors that now clouded his professional image. It was a significant blow, one that would have been unthinkable just a few months ago. But now it was a reality, a testament to the power of reputation and the consequences of one's actions. As I sat in my apartment that evening, my phone rang. It was Mark, his voice a cocktail of anger and desperation. "Emily, what the hell have you been telling people? My life is falling apart." "Is it, Mark? Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to betray me," I responded, my voice calm but firm. "You're ruining me, Emily. This isn't fair," he protested. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? You cheated, Mark. You made your bed, and now you have to lie in it," I said. The call ended with Mark's frustrated silence, a clear sign that my message had hit home. I lay back on my couch, a sense of vindication filling me. This was more than revenge. This was justice. Mark was finally reaping what he had sown, and I, Emily Carter, was the architect of his downfall. The cool evening breeze wafted through my apartment, carrying with it a sense of triumph. The walls, once a symbol of shared dreams with Mark, now stood as a testament to my newfound strength. I, Emily Carter, had turned the tables, and the sweet taste of revenge was more satisfying than I had imagined. As I poured myself a glass of wine, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Mark, his name flashing on the screen like a beacon of his desperation. "Emily, we need to talk. This has gone too far," he said, his voice strained. I took a sip of my wine, savoring its richness. "Talk? What's there to talk about, Mark? You made your choices, and now you're facing the consequences. You've destroyed my reputation, Emily. My friends, my job, everything is falling apart because of these rumors," he accused, his voice laced with bitterness. "Rumors? Mark, the truth has a way of coming out. You can't hide from what you've done," I replied coolly. "This isn't you, Emily. This vindictiveness, it's not you," he pleaded. I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You'd be surprised, Mark. Betrayal changes people. You should know. You're the expert." The line went silent for a moment. "I'll make it right, Emily. Please, let's just put this behind us," he begged. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. "It's too late for that, Mark. You've shown your true colors, and I've shown mine. This is the end of our story." With that, I ended the call, cutting off any further pleas from Mark. The sense of empowerment was exhilarating. For too long, I had been the victim of his deceit, but now I was the author of his downfall. Over the following days, I watched as Mark's social circle shrunk, his friends distancing themselves as the truth of his infidelity spread. His professional life, too, suffered, with the missed promotion being just the beginning of his career troubles. But the most satisfying part was yet to come. Through a mutual acquaintance, I learned that Mark's affair partner had left him, unable to handle the public scrutiny and the reality of being with a man of tarnished reputation. Mark was left alone, a pariah in the life he had chosen over me. As I sat in my living room, the walls no longer felt oppressive. They were my sanctuary, a place where I had rebuilt myself from the ashes of a broken heart. I had taken back control of my life, and in doing so had ensured that Mark felt the full weight of his betrayal. The journey had been painful, fraught with moments of doubt and anguish. But as I looked back, I realized it was necessary. It had led me to a place of strength and independence, a place where I could finally close the chapter on Mark Anderson and look forward to a future of my own making. Emily Carter, once the betrayed fiancée, was now a woman reborn, a woman who had faced her demons and emerged victorious. The sweet taste of revenge lingered, a reminder that sometimes justice is served not in the courts, but through the actions of those who refuse to be broken. The journey of revenge had reached its end, but for me, a new chapter was just beginning. Sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, I reflected on the transformation that had taken place. The pain of Mark's betrayal, once a consuming fire, had now dwindled to a mere flicker in the story of my life. My phone rang, breaking the morning's tranquility. It was a call from Laura, Mark's sister. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Emily, I heard about everything." Laura's voice was tinged with sadness. "I'm sorry for what Mark did to you." I sighed softly. "Thank you, Laura. It's been a tough journey, but I think it was necessary." "Mark's a mess, Emily. He's lost so much, his friends, his reputation. I never thought he'd be capable of something like this," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "I didn't either, Laura, but we often don't see the true colors of a person until we're forced to," I replied, my tone resolute. There was a pause filled with unspoken words and shared pain. "I hope you find happiness, Emily. You deserve it," Laura finally said. "Thank you, Laura. I wish the same for you," I replied, ending the call with a sense of closure. As the day progressed, I busied myself with work and plans for the future. The lessons I had learned from my ordeal with Mark had reshaped my perspective on life and love. Trust, once freely given, would now be earned, and the scars of betrayal, while healed, would always serve as a reminder of my strength. My social media, once a battleground of subtle jabs and public displays of independence, now showcased a woman embracing her new life. Photos of my travels, moments of professional success, and gatherings with true friends painted the picture of a life rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I heard snippets of Mark's struggles through mutual acquaintances. His attempts to salvage his reputation were met with cold shoulders, and his professional life continued to suffer. The man who once held my heart was now a mere shadow, a cautionary tale of the consequences of infidelity and deceit. But as I looked out of my window, watching the city bustle below, I realized that Mark Anderson's story was no longer mine to dwell on. I had moved on, leaving him and the pain he caused in the past. I turned my gaze to the horizon, where the sky met the cityscape in a promise of endless possibilities. Emily Carter, once a victim, was now a victor, her spirit unbroken, and her heart open to the adventures that lay ahead. The journey of revenge had ended, but my journey of self-discovery and growth was just beginning. And as I stepped out into the world, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the strength and resilience to face them head-on.
The early mornings at work are my favorite. I believe that I like the calm atmosphere. I open the window a little to let in some fresh air and water the potted plants beside the window. This routine hasn't altered since I began working for this organization. I'm 30 years old, and my name is Tom. I work for a large general trading company as a salesperson. Month after month, I constantly have the lowest sales performance. My coworkers and bosses don't think well of me since they think I'm unmotivated. Actually, I have no interest in working or moving up the corporate ladder. My primary responsibility has shifted to running small errands for my colleagues who are out on sales calls, because I tend to be a bother when I go with them. Live moderately and live quietly without drawing attention are my guiding principles. But this year's transfers brought someone who seemed intent on appending my peaceful existence. "You're early again today, Tommy," she replied with her upbeat greeting. She put her thin arms over my neck. The warmth of her body on my back was palpable. "Good morning, Jessica." Without coming across as harsh, I unwrapped her arms from around my neck and added, "You're energetic early in the morning." Jessica is her name. She moved here in the spring and is now our supervisor. She's 4 years older than me, has lived overseas, and speaks 3 languages fluently. A real talent. She is well liked by both men and women due to her direct nature and constant cheerfulness. Additionally, she is an excellent superior, and within a week of her hiring, those who had initially objected to having a female boss gave up. Or why is it so cold? I pushed Jessica's arms away, and she pouted, "There's nobody else here." She seems to like me for some reason. I am merely an ordinary office worker who is not very good at his job. She, however, is a true career lady and a go-getter. Why she is so obsessed with someone like me is beyond me. "That isn't the point, Jessica," I said. "I don't like how touchy-feely you are." I've been expressing this more assertively over time. I was initially just confused and unsure of how to respond. You would blush at first, and it was adorable. "However, you've been a little naughty lately," Jessica remarked as she sat down next to my desk and fully reclined in the chair. Her spine cracked, and I could hear it. It's likely that she worked through the night yesterday. In our department, she is typically the first person to arrive, and after me, the last one to exit. "You know I have to spell things out for you, right?" I sighed as I spoke. Speaking your mind is fine, but treating me unfairly, that's not cool. She retorted, puffing out her cheeks, and gave a little kick to the chair I was sitting in. Her gesture reminded me of a sulking child. It's a side of her completely different from her professional demeanor. Honestly, I can't wrap my head around why such a talented and beautiful woman, 4 years my senior, is so aggressively pursuing me. The entire department has come to recognize and accept this dynamic between Jessica and me. I find this situation deeply concerning. I constantly worry that being around a guy like me, who lacks motivation, might tarnish her reputation. Yesterday, I even found myself making a wish at the local chapel, hoping to get back my peaceful days. Anyway, no excessive PDA. I told her in as cold a voice as I could muster. A disgruntled "all right" came in response. Truth be told, it's not unpleasant having a beauty like her make advances. However, the drawbacks are significant. I get jealous comments from male colleagues and recently from a junior, Emily. Time and time again, I stress that I just want to lead a peaceful, inconspicuous life while sneaking a glance at the back of Jessica, who was stylishly dressed in a slim-fitting pantsuit. I sighed again, watching her always so cheerful. Having spent time abroad as a child reminds me of a past I'd rather forget. I think only the HR folks at work know this, but I'm actually a Richie from overseas. I spent my childhood constantly moving from one foreign country to another because of my dad's job. I didn't come back to the US until I was 15. Being right smack in the middle of my teenage years probably didn't help. Having lived in multiple countries, I was a social butterfly. I thought I'd fit right into an American high school in no time, but reality wasn't so straightforward. I made friends quickly, and at first, I think my life in the US was smooth sailing. The one person who brought my high school life crashing down was a single girl. Hell began when I was in 11th grade, and she ended up in my class. For whatever reason, she had it out for me. Stuff like, he's flaunting that he lived abroad, or he's too cocky and flashy, or he just doesn't get it. Being the queen bee at the top of the school hierarchy, she probably thought she could get her way with everything. The moment she spoke against me, my life changed. No one would talk to me or even make eye contact. Everyone was scared stiff of her. Then I realized if I tried to talk to my close friends, they'd get a hard time too. From that moment, I became invisible. It lasted until graduation. I declared to my dad that I would never attend a college in the US around that time. True to my word, I left for the UK right after high school graduation. Later on, I got into the University of Oxford. I only came back to the US because my mom wanted me to. My mom, who was in poor health, I think was feeling a bit vulnerable. I wasn't mature enough to refuse such a request from her. Remembering my high school days, I made a promise to myself on the day I started my job to always stay under the radar, a presence that wouldn't disrupt my peaceful days. What should I do about Jessica, a thorn in my side? Then, one day, an even bigger problem stood before me. It was a scorcher of a day, and my colleagues, who had been outside on assignments, were chugging down cold water as soon as they returned to the office. I was in charge of on-the-job tasks, so I prepared chilled wet towels for them and did everything I could to support. I always made sure never to take center stage in my duties. Tom, a customer specifically asked for you. My junior, Emily, approached me with a puzzled look on her face. It made sense. Nobody had ever specifically asked to speak to me for a business discussion before. Emily seemed a bit worried as she whispered to me in a voice others couldn't hear. Are you okay? I'm not sure, but I'll meet with them anyway, I said, trying to reassure her. I lightly patted little Emily's shoulder, but she seemed to remain concerned and followed behind me. It looked like she intended to join me. I felt like a failure of a senior to have my junior this worried about me. Taking a deep breath, I said, "Excuse me," before knocking. A young woman's voice from the reception room responded, "Please come in." At that moment, cold sweat ran down my back, and I felt a slight dizziness. I instinctively wanted to run away, not understanding why. The moment I bravely opened the door, I was frozen on the spot. How many years has it been? You didn't even attend graduation. I was worried if you were even alive. Bright red lips uttered those words. Despite her flat, easy makeup, it suited her queenly demeanor perfectly. Lucy, lounging on the reception room sofa, was the very person who had brought about my downfall. Lucy, she was the last person I ever wanted to see. I probably looked quite shaken, and from behind, Emily asked again, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I responded and took a seat across from Lucy, saying, "Excuse me. When I saw you in the hallway earlier, I didn't think it was really you. I mean, who could have imagined back then that you'd be working for such a prestigious company?" Her condescending and arrogant tone was unchanged from our school days. She looked at me with a mocking upward glance and smirked. She seemed like a predator who had just spotted its prey, making my heart feel like it was going to jump out of my chest. Though I felt the need to say something, my mouth was dry, and no words would come out. Lucy enjoyed my distress, grinning broadly. I tried to remind myself I'm not that high school kid anymore. Excuse me, did my subordinate do something rude? I hadn't even noticed when Jessica entered the room, so hearing her voice nearly made me jump out of my skin. Who are you? Lucy asked with a frown, glaring at the sudden appearance. It seemed like she was annoyed, thinking her fun had been interrupted. I'm Jessica, Tom's supervisor. Tom rarely handles business meetings, so I hope he wasn't rude to you. Her face was smiling politely, but her eyes weren't. It felt like sparks were flying between Lucy and Jessica. After a tense moment, it was Lucy who broke first. Fine, I'll let it slide this time. Our companies have had a long-standing relationship since my father's time. Let's keep it that way, Lucy said, standing up and exiting the reception room with the click-clack of her heels. Quickly, Emily went to see Lucy out. The sound of the door slamming shut was the cue that allowed me to finally relax. Considering my unusual reaction, there would likely be questions from Jessica. The sinking feeling of having to explain my past to her weighed me down. Apparently, she's undergoing co-training. She may come around again, but you don't have to deal with her, Tom. Let's have Emily grow into the role instead, Jessica said with a reassuring pat on my shoulder. Feeling the warmth of her hand, I was on the verge of tears. In the end, Jessica never asked me the reason I was upset that day, and we finished our day's work. I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. At the meeting the next day, it was decided that Emily would handle Lucy's account, and I was designated as her backup. I briefly explained to Emily that Lucy and I were high school classmates from the previous day's events. Emily seemed to have picked up on my reluctance to deal with Lucy. I'm truly grateful for Emily's hard work. She tried her best to cater to Lucy's needs so I wouldn't have to face her, I explained. If there was any mistake, as her senior, I'd have to represent the company in front of Lucy. Emily carefully continued the dealings with Lucy's firm. Initially, Lucy demanded me, but when she realized her requests were being denied, she began other tactics to annoy us. She started bringing non-native English speakers to business meetings, sometimes just acquaintances, and at times introduced them as co-owners. Emily could handle Spanish, French, and Chinese, but occasionally Lucy would bring along someone who spoke Italian, Portuguese, or Japanese, which Emily couldn't handle. In such cases, Jessica quickly stepped in to support Emily. I felt guilty watching this, knowing I couldn't help. I felt bad burdening my junior, Emily, and worrying Jessica. I kept thinking I was a failure as a professional. One day, our always cheerful Jessica was out sick with a fever. It's rare for her to call in sick, so everyone was concerned. According to Emily, she was overworked and sleep-deprived, leading to a weakened immune system, and she caught a cold. Though it was an unfortunate situation, I hope she'd take a good rest. If Jessica isn't here to help and Lucy brings someone I can't communicate with, Emily gazed anxiously at the words Jessica absent written on the whiteboard. Her fears became a reality. Well, I, who rarely go out for client visits, was out assisting a colleague. Lucy suddenly arrived with a troublesome matter. When I returned to the office, I could hear Lucy berating Emily throughout the floor. Rushing into the room, Emily was flinching, being yelled at by Lucy. It seemed that today's negotiation required Italian, and Emily's weakness was exposed. You do realize this is a trading company, right? How do you work here not knowing Italian? Or are you just looking down on us? Lucy yelled at Emily without a second thought. Her face didn't show a hint of anger. She was grinning with a nasty smile, seemingly enjoying the situation to the fullest. It looked as if she had found her prey. Your usual helpful supervisor isn't here today. I heard she's feeling under the weather. Can't even take care of her own health. That's so third-rate, Lucy said. Beside the sarcastic Lucy was a young Italian, who didn't seem to understand what was going on, nervously watching Emily and Lucy. He was probably dragged here against his will by Lucy. Well, Speak up. Can't do business with someone I introduce you to, or are you going to apologize? Lucy continued, explaining that she didn't understand. With Emily's head lowered, Lucy tapped her on the back of the head rhythmically with a rolled-up document. Emily's back visibly shivered. Colleagues observed the situation from a distance, running around searching for someone in the other departments who could speak Italian. Meanwhile, Lucy's attitude kept escalating. Can't even explain? Come here right now. Saying this, she forcefully pulled Emily off the couch. The moment I saw that, something snapped inside me. Is there an issue here? I quickly brushed off the hand Lucy had on Emily's shoulder and shielded her behind me. Oh, Tom, long time no see. Are you here to play in her place? Lucy, finding a new target, had a cruel glint in her eyes. Ignoring her completely, I'd addressed the fled young Italian man. Are you interested in doing business with our company? Of course, I wasn't speaking in English. Italian flowed naturally for me. The young man seemed relieved to finally hear his native language. On the other hand, Lucy was stunned, staring at me in disbelief. The young man excitedly began explaining the plan he had in mind to me, looking at me engaged in the conversation. Emily seemed genuinely surprised. All this time, she thought I was just some guy who did menial tasks by the window, but suddenly, I was speaking Italian fluently and handling the negotiation. I can't blame her for being taken aback. During the negotiation, Lucy seemed to be glaring at me resentfully. In the end, the young man and I shook hands, laughed about the potential for a big deal, and wrapped up our discussion. Emily escorted the young man to the front door as he wanted to report the outcome to his boss right away. Back in the reception room, Lucy and I couldn't tear our eyes away from each other, locked in a standoff. Nothing's changed with you. Still haven't grown up. I was the first to speak. The Lucy who I once found intimidating didn't scare me at all today. Perhaps successfully navigating that tough negotiation boosted my confidence. Excuse me, what are you trying to say? Lucy, seemingly caught off guard by my comment, retorted in a flippant manner. She still carried her usual high and mighty queen attitude, but I could sense a hint of panic and fear. What I'm saying is that you're acting childish, still pulling the same stunts as you did in high school without considering your age, I continued. Once I started, I couldn't pull back. Words I had been holding in for so long came pouring out. Oh, so you always have someone by your side because you haven't improved your Spanish at all. Must be tough babysitting an EPT like you. Don't you realize you're a burden? I figured out pretty early on that Lucy wasn't proficient in Spanish. She probably couldn't speak Chinese either. Being the daughter of a trading company CEO, Lucy likely had the stamp of failure pressed upon her. Acting tough probably masked her insecurities. I realize this now, maybe because I've grown up. What do you know? She hurled the paper she was holding at me, her voice shaking with anger. Her clenched fist trembled. Just because you can effortlessly speak other languages, you think you're so great. Give me a break. Lucy's yelling sounded more like a desperate scream to me. Looking back to high school, I realized that the reason Lucy treated me so poorly was probably due to her own insecurities. I only found out that her father was the CEO of a trading company after graduating from high school. I vaguely recalled that Lucy struggled greatly with her Spanish classes back then, but that's no excuse for the way she treated me. Deal with your own issues yourself. You're a grown-up after all, I said. My words made Lucy's face turn beet red. She must have felt embarrassed being called out like that. She grabbed her bag from the couch and stormed out of the reception room, the sound of her heels echoing on the floor. I thought maybe I was a bit too harsh, but I didn't have the luxury of choosing my words carefully, and it's not like I didn't have any grudges. I hope she forgives me for being a tad bit sharp. Why did you keep quiet about being able to speak? Are you still hiding something from me? Suddenly, I heard Jessica's voice from behind and instinctively turned around. There stood Jessica, looking pale. Her lips were of a terrible color. She glared at me with an upward gaze. Jessica, you look terrible." "Of course I do. I'm still running a fever. Got called in despite that, but I'm glad I came. Got to see something interesting," she said as she gently took a seat next to me. Emily, who had just returned from seeing some guests, saw Jessica and asked with concern, "Are you okay?" "Don't worry about me. I'm fine. Everyone get back to your work," Jessica said, clearing the reception room. I braced myself for a reprimand. It felt like I was neglecting my duty by claiming I couldn't do what I was supposed to do. I figured I'd have no right to complain even if I got fired for negligence. "You're such a lying prince." Those unexpected words came out of Jessica's mouth. I was dumbfounded and could only utter, "What? Don't you remember me? That's cruel." I looked closely at Jessica's face. She must be feverish. Her face was pale, and only the area around her eyes was slightly red. It looked like she had been crying. Suddenly, memories flooded back. "Oh, we've met before, right?" I was certain now. The girl with swollen red eyes, crying in a corner of a park in a foreign country, Europe. That image overlaid with Jessica before me. "Oh, in Germany," I exclaimed. She smiled warmly. "You finally remember. Since that day, you've been my prince on a white horse." When I approached the crying girl, she whispered in a tiny voice, "I don't understand." She was acting tough, saying she only needed to speak English and didn't need friends in a foreign land. But tears kept pouring from her big eyes. Being addressed in English must have comforted her. When I was still a young boy, I confidently told her, tears streaming down her face from trying to put on a brave front, a piece of advice my father once gave me. If you can speak multiple languages, the world becomes so much bigger for you. It's a waste to just confine yourself to a small world. Just gather up a little courage and strike up a conversation. I remember looking at her, clearly older than me, and proudly saying those words. Her tears stopped, and I felt relieved. Seeing that, I always wanted to meet the boy from that time again. I remembered his face and name. "I thought you looked similar, but your personality seems so different now. I wondered if you really were my prince." Jessica chuckled. The day after I met her, she told me she had gathered the courage to speak to a classmate at school. It was as if a spell had been cast, making the invisible barriers between them crumble instantly. Having parents with jobs that took them all around the world, she had been moving from place to place herself. Comparing our overseas stances, we realized there were times when we almost crossed paths. Quite the close calls. I always thought we had a fateful reunion overseas, but to meet here of all places, it's hardly romantic, she pouted, looking somewhat childish. Truth be told, I often went back to that park, hoping to find the girl I had seen crying, but never finding her. I moved to the next country after returning to the States. I was so caught up with my own life that I never thought of her. "It's quite a curious connection we have," I said. I wish I could have come up with something more eloquent, but that was all I could muster. "Don't you think it's more like fate than just a curious connection? You get what I mean, right?" Considering her perspective, she might be right. I always believed, with no real basis, that I could pull fate towards me. "Impressive, right?" she boasted, wrapping an arm around my shoulder. Leaning in close to my face, she gave a wide grin. "You don't think you can escape, do you, Tommy? You're the one who expanded my world, so you have the responsibility to stay by my side in this vast world. Understand?" Such a forceful approach was very much like her, but I didn't mind it at all. With the world being so vast, I wondered how I got caught. "Don't you think you're getting a little cheeky?" The image of her laughing so hard she'd fall over in a wedding dress was a scene for a not-so-distant future. Running from her, who had strong-armed fate into granting this chance encounter, seemed impossible. I guess if this were a novel, it would be a happy ending. "My name is David. I'm just an average office worker. I'm not really into standing out, so I'm pretty quiet at the office. I just get through the work given to me, and if I finish without mistakes, I consider it a job well done. While my colleagues are hustling to climb the corporate ladder, I'm not really interested in promotions. I just hope for a peaceful day every day. Luckily, I ended up working for a top-tier company. I rarely have to work overtime, and I think my salary is pretty decent compared to others at my age. My days are pretty much the same. I just go to work and come home every day, cook up a simple meal, enjoy my dinner while watching TV, and then head to bed. But maybe this monotonous life is what happiness is all about. That's what I've been thinking. I don't have a family anymore. Both my parents have passed away. I still remember that time when I was in second grade. That day, both my parents had the day off and they went out in their car, saying they had some major shopping to do. They said they'd be back by the time I got home from school, but they weren't back by evening. As night fell, a neighbor lady, Mrs. Wilson, approached me. I had been sitting in front of the house for hours, so she probably got concerned. When I explained the situation, she took me to the nearby police station. I don't know what Mrs. Wilson told them, but I remember the police suddenly getting very busy. They told me that my parents might have been in an accident. I was taken to the hospital by the police. However, upon arrival, I was told the devastating news that both my parents had died. The only thing I remember from the hospital was seeing the bodies of my mom and dad. I can't recall what happened after, like the funeral or what happened to our house. Maybe the mental shock was too big, as I seemed to have lost some of my memories. Next thing I knew, I was in an orphanage. I had no grandparents or relatives, so I had nowhere else to go. There were other kids in the facility, but I didn't really interact with them. I just followed the rules set by the staff and kept to myself. I stayed at the orphanage until I turned 18 and moved out after graduating high school. Maybe I should go to college, was my main thought. With that in mind, I went on to college. Thanks to the savings and insurance money left by my parents, I could attend college without financial worries. Go to school, work a part-time job, come home, and sleep. I became less talkative after my parents' death, and that hasn't changed even now as an adult. I guess I've always avoided interacting with people. Being bad at expressing my emotions probably didn't help. I've never really had close friends, let alone a significant other, mostly just acquaintances. I had always thought I'd probably end up being single, and I was okay with being alone. Even though I was just living an ordinary life, something unexpected happened one day. I'll never forget it. It was when I turned 30. On that day, I was working as usual. Things were going smoothly, and I was having a rather laid-back day. I decided to get some office supplies from the supply cabinet. To my surprise, we were running low on a lot of items. Normally, the newer employees would restock the supplies, but I thought, since I had some time, why not do it myself? So I said, I've got some free time. I'll go get the supplies, and headed to the supply room. As I switched on the light and entered the room, I began to load up a cart with supplies from my list. Then a woman from another department walked in. Our eyes met, and we gave each other a courteous nod. Wow, a pretty girl just walked in. That's what crossed my mind instantly. It wasn't a crush or anything, but I found myself wondering, is she from the next department? I don't recall such a pretty girl working here. Taking a closer look, she had these cute beauty marks under her eyes, which made her already cool-looking eyes appear even more attractive. No, don't keep staring. It'd be so embarrassing if she caught me. I realized I'd been unintentionally staring and felt a rush of embarrassment. Taking a brief deep breath, I composed myself and went back to collecting the supplies. But then it happened. Suddenly, there was a deep rumbling sound followed by a strong side-to-side shake. It was an earthquake. The shaking grew more intense. Being in the supply room, there was a high risk of things falling down. The spot where she and I were located was at the back of the supply room, and the exit was too far. With the intense shaking, It felt too risky to make a dash for it. Cover your head. Use a basket or a box upside down and protect yourself. I shouted instinctively. The tremor felt like it lasted forever, but thanks to the fixed shelves in the supply room, a major disaster was avoided. Supplies were scattered all over the place, but neither of us got hurt. Are you okay? I rushed over and asked her. She seemed fine, replying, Yeah, that was quite a shock. It lasted quite a while, didn't it? She slowly got up and added, It's quite a mess here, but maybe we should head outside first and check on others. Concerned about potential aftershocks and with the supply room door still closed, I started heading towards the door. Oops, sorry, she bumped into my back. Something wrong. Looking at the storage room door, I was taken aback and stood there. She leaned over from behind me and was equally stunned. To our disbelief, cardboard boxes that had been piled near the door had collapsed, blocking our exit. To make matters worse, it seemed a box had opened, scattering promotional items all over the place. We can't get out this way. Should we clean this up? She said. She agreed with a sigh, and I started moving the heavier boxes, asking her to pick up the lighter promotional items. Why, of all places, did it have to block the door? She complained but continued neatly placing the scattered items back into the boxes. Just hang on a bit longer. We'll clear a path to the door soon, I said. I rolled up my sleeves, ready for some heavy lifting. All right, once we move this, we can get the door open. At last, we cleared a path to the door. Thinking we could finally leave, I twisted the doorknob and pushed. Thud. Huh. A dull noise echoed, and despite several attempts, the door would only open a few inches. This isn't good, I murmured to myself. Peeking through the small gap in the door, I saw a cart loaded with supplies blocking it from the other side. Other boxes had fallen over in the corridor, making it even harder to access the cardboard boxes, and card had gotten jammed in such a way that the door wouldn't open. I tried jostling the door multiple times, but it wouldn't budge. We're stuck, I sighed, feeling a wave of despair. But on the bright side, other coworkers were still around. Someone would eventually come. So, I decided to team up with her and start cleaning up the scattered promotional items and supplies. We really got trapped. Che, she eased, noticing my involuntary sigh, and said in a cheery voice, Yeah, I really thought we'd get out. I responded, laughing. However, our conversation was brief. We silently continued our tasks. As I was thinking we were nearly done, an unmistakable growling sound broke the silence. I turned my head toward the sound. She looked embarrassed as she held her stomach. That was mine, she said. Did you hear that? Her face turned beech red with embarrassment. Yes, I heard it loud and clear, I said honestly, and we both burst out laughing. Although we were strangers, that little moment of laughter lightened the mood. While continuing to tidy up, we chatted a bit and shared our names and departments. Her name was Sarah, 4 years younger than me, and she worked in the department next to mine. As we talked, a voice from the other side of the door called out, Hey, is anyone there? Peeking through the gap in the door, a voice said, Hold on, we'll clear the way. A few folks moved carts and other obstacles, enabling our safe exit. Luckily, the earthquake's damage was minimal. Just some items had fallen from shelves and desks. By the next day, we were back to normal. From then on, my days were filled with routine work, yet I would often bump into Sarah, whom I'd met in the storage room, in the hallway, lobby, or the staff cafeteria. I hadn't realized it before, but we had crossed paths frequently within the company. We began greeting each other whenever we met. One day, during lunch while I was eating in the cafeteria, Sarah approached, asking, Mind if I join you? We took that opportunity to express our gratitude for that day we spent trapped together. It seemed we never found the right moment to stop and talk about it before. Sarah also wanted to thank me, saying, I'm so glad you were there with me that day. I'm not sure if I could have gotten out if I was alone in the storage room. You really saved me." From then on, I often chatted with Sarah due to our lunch breaks frequently overlapping. We often eat together or have coffee afterward. Though I was always a bit shy and struggled to converse, Sarah was always proactive in starting conversations, so there was never a lull. Eventually, we began to occasionally dine out in the evenings. It felt strange for a socially awkward guy like me to be out and about, engaging in so much conversation. Somehow, I just clicked with Sarah. After one of our meals, Sarah opened up about her feelings for me. It was the first time that someone had confessed to me like that. I was taken aback, but that's when I realized my own feelings. Soon, Sarah and I started dating. Things moved swiftly, and before we knew it, we were discussing marriage. After a successful proposal, I visited Sarah's parents. On the day of the visit, Sarah's parents, who also lived with her older brother and his wife, warmly welcomed us. While I had planned for a brief visit, they insisted on having dinner together, making me feel right at home. Being a man of few words, I barely answered the family's questions. They even inquired about my family. I answered all their questions honestly. However, a few days after the visit, I received a message from Sarah. Apparently, Sarah's sister-in-law, Lisa, wanted to have a word with me. I wondered if they might be against our marriage, but that wasn't the case. I was told we'd discuss the matter in person, so a meeting was arranged between Sarah, Lisa, and me. On the appointed day, we met at a quiet cafe. Let me get straight to the point. Lisa began, then started asking detailed questions about my mother, when she passed away, her name, maiden name, place of birth, blood type, and more. She also inquired why I didn't have any grandparents or relatives. I answered everything within my knowledge. After a pause, Lisa said, "Look at these photos. Does this woman look like your mother?" She showed me 2 pictures of a young woman who unmistakably resembled my mom. After confirming the resemblance, she took another breath and asked, "You're an only child, right?" When I replied, "Yes," Lisa gave a quiet nod. She took another deep breath and said, "Let me tell you the truth about you," looking me straight in the eye. Confused, I waited for her next words. "This woman," she said, "she's my mother." Lisa's lips trembled as she spoke. I was in disbelief, asking her to repeat herself over and over, but she was unequivocal. "She's my mother." What does that mean? I tried to organize my thoughts as I listened to Lisa's story. Lisa had been told she was an orphan and was raised by her grandparents. One day, while cleaning up, she found a photograph. When she showed it to her grandmother, she hesitated at first but eventually admitted that the woman in the photo was Lisa's mother. She also explained why Lisa had been separated from her parents to start with. Lisa had a brother, 2 years senior. Their mother became pregnant with him at 16. Both parents were the same age, meaning the father was also 16 at the time. The mother was determined to have the child, and the father intended to marry her when he turned 18. However, this was met with strong opposition from the mother's parents. These grandparents were strict and believed in strict adherence to family traditions. Yet, the young mother persisted and gave birth at the age of 16. Afterward, while juggling jobs and having dropped out of high school, she entrusted childcare either to daycare or her parents. The father, on the other hand, continued attending high school while working part-time jobs to make ends meet. Both were genuinely committed to raising their child despite the continuing objections from the grandparents. The young couple had decided they would marry once they turned 18. Then, Lisa was conceived. The news infuriated the grandparents, but the baby was eventually born. This birth took place when both parents were 18, and they intended to register their marriage that very year. However, the grandparents staunchly opposed, especially against the father, whom they perceived as the culprit for their daughter's teenage pregnancy. Frictions became a daily affair, primarily revolving around the children's future and living arrangements. They chastised their young daughter, often remarking, "You're just a child who had a child. Listen to what we say." Still, the determined mother, aiming to keep her family intact, was met with a stern, "Leave the kids and get out. You're disowned." Numerous attempts were made to reconcile, and she tried taking her children with her, but the grandparents stood firm. Ultimately, she was estranged, without any contact with her children. I was shocked to learn about the tumultuous past of my parents, and the fact that I had a sibling was a revelation to me. Incidentally, the grandfather has since passed away, and the grandmother, though still alive, is now in a nursing home. Lisa, without mentioning anything about me, had inquired again about her mother. Moreover, given that our grandmother's surname was quite unique, she was certain that they were blood-related. The week after hearing the story, I, along with Sarah and Lisa, visited our mother's childhood home. Presently, my elder brother's family is living in our grandmother's house, and it was the first time I was introduced to him. Following that, Lisa and I went to the nursing home where our grandmother resided. Although hesitant to meet her at first, we decided to have a conversation. Initially, our grandmother couldn't believe my existence and was taken aback. But noticing the resemblance I bore to my mother, she mentioned how much I looked like her. Our grandmother was unaware that my mother had married my father, and she certainly had no knowledge of the tragic car accident that took my mother's life. Hearing this, tears streamed down our grandmother's face. She deeply regretted disowning her daughter due to parental pride and expressed her desire to apologize if given a chance to meet her daughter again. The town where my mother and Lisa grew up was quite a distance from my current residence. Yet, little did I know, my sister lived so close by. That year was not just significant for meeting Sarah, but also for discovering and connecting with blood relatives like my siblings and grandmother. Fast forward a few years. Daddy? No. D. Playing with me. Daddy. All right. Let's all play together, okay. I was surrounded by my children, unable to move. My kids really love their daddy, Sarah teased as she too hugged me. Come on, Sarah. Not you too. Everyone giggles and clings to me. Now, at 38, I'm living a lively life with my 3 beloved sons and my cherished wife, Sarah. We're soon expecting our 4th child. Since then, I've been in touch with my sister, living nearby, and her 3 sons. My children play together as if they were siblings. Though my elder brother lives far away, we, along with my sister's family, visit him annually during the summer break without fail. Interestingly, my brother and I have similar facial features, and even more intriguing is how much my brother's children resemble younger me. When we look closely, all the children share striking similarities. We all look as if we were born from the same parents. We often jest that the bond of blood is indeed mysterious. Despite never having lived together with my siblings, our interactions felt natural from the start. Given how I was never adept at social interactions, we being able to interact well with my siblings surprises me. Having once believed I would live a life of solitude, never did I imagine that, in just a few years, I would be surrounded by the warmth of a family. Life truly is unpredictable. I aim to cherish this unexpected happiness.
My name is Sandra Holmes. I am 40 years old and I have no kids from my second marriage. My husband is a kind man who never misses our monthly dates. No matter how busy he is, he always keeps his promises. I know I shouldn't compare him to my first husband, but I have never regretted my divorce, nor have I regretted getting remarried. And this month is our 8th wedding anniversary. My husband had reserved a table at a fancy restaurant with a view of the sea. I thought we were going to have a wonderful time. But then I ran into the last person I wanted to see. It was Jim Stone, my ex-husband from 10 years ago. We were about to leave the restaurant after finishing our meal. When my husband excused himself to go to the restroom, I was admiring the ocean view from the window. What a beautiful view! As I gazed at the sea, I reminisced about the times my husband and I had spent looking at the ocean together. Just then, I heard someone call my name. And when I turned around, "Hey, what's so beautiful? Do you think a regular ocean appears nice to someone like you who's pretty much broke?" "Jim. Hey, long time no see. Why are you... Why?" "I'm the one who should be asking you why." Jim sat down in the chair my husband had been using, looking at me as if I was a joke. "Yes, those eyes. I put up with those eyes for a whole decade of our marriage. I never thought I'd run into you here. Can someone like you, who doesn't have much money, really eat at a fancy place like this? Can you even afford it? Or are you here for a once-in-a-lifetime thing? It's our wedding anniversary." "Ah. I see. Poor people can only come to places like this on anniversaries, huh? I come here often, you know." "You're still pathetic. Isn't there someone with you?" "Yeah, there is. I just sent her to pay. You know, handling money is a woman's job." I thought he was still the same, always belittling women. "Ah, she's back. Just wait there." The woman who came back was his lover from 10 years ago. She has aged quite a bit, her beauty half what it used to be, and she looks worn out from life. I guess Jim has been living it up while his wife suffers. "You're still wearing shabby clothes, aren't you? Aren't you embarrassed to dress so poorly? Talking to such a terrible man like him makes me feel sick." I turned my gaze toward the restroom, hoping my husband would return soon, and there he was. He had been watching us for a while, as I was talking to another man. Seeing the confusion on my face, he approached us. "Excuse me, do you need something from my wife?" "Your wife? This woman is your wife?" "Yes." "What do you need? You also look poor." "I guess poor women always remarry poor men." "Please don't be rude. My husband is a very respectable man." Jim snorted in disapproval at my response. "Humph. You must be just a useless, broke man." Then he glared at my husband. I thought, this man really hasn't changed at all. Jim was very selfish. Although he worked for a major corporation, it was unclear if he was competent. He was good at sucking up to his boss, though. He blamed his mistakes on his juniors, and loudly claimed their achievements were due to his guidance. How he managed to climb the corporate ladder is beyond me. But by the time we divorced, he had become a manager. Jim claimed he was an elite employee, but I never thought of him as elite. I graduated from a prestigious university. That's what Jim would always brag about. Not just any university, but a very different kind from the ordinary ones. When I was only dating him, I believed his exaggerated stories and thought he was really smart. But when we got married, I discovered that was his only real talent. Plus, he consistently degraded me, even though I only completed high school. Your parents were too poor to send you to university, right? But it's good for you. You didn't have the brains for it anyway. If your family had been rich, you would have had to go to university. But it would have been impossible for someone as stupid as you. My family wasn't poor. I just wanted to start working sooner rather than going to college. Ah, enough with the excuses. You can't handle not making excuses, right? You're an incompetent woman, after all. It's good for women, isn't it? Even if they're incompetent or stupid, as long as they have good looks, they can get by. If they catch a competent man, they can live well. I never imagined he would say such things before we married. So his transformation after marriage shocked me. Moreover, his parents weren't wealthy landowners, his father was just a director. Yet he ruthlessly looked down on anyone he considered poor. You really can't do anything right. You're bad at cooking, you can't clean, and you can't even have kids. Marrying you was a huge mistake. It wasn't a physical issue that prevented me from having kids, it was the stress caused by Jim. My family has always valued frugality and cherishing what we have. But when I cooked with radish leaves to save money, he yelled, "Are you trying to feed me trash?" and threw them in the trash. It made me realize how different we fundamentally were. One day, he told me he had a lover. The woman was much younger than he was. He pushed for a divorce, saying it was better for him to remarry a younger woman. I was happy to divorce such a man. I signed the divorce papers. Who is this man, Sandra? He's my ex-husband, Jim Stone. Oh, I see. Of course, I had told my husband about everything Jim had said and done to me. It had been a painful 10 years, and I had shared it all with tears. Then, without saying anything, my husband just listened and finally said, "Let's be happy from now on. You really dared to marry such a woman like her? Since you're marrying a woman from a poor family, you must be a broke guy too." Well, maybe. Maybe not. Of course, you are. So, you're also a broke man, huh? What? Marrying a poor person means you're broke too, am I right? But, why did you divorce such a wonderful person? Wonderful? Your eyes must be fooling you. Truly wonderful means having a beautiful wife like mine. He indicated his wife as he pointed at her, who stood there looking embarrassed. Is that woman your wife? Yes, she's beautiful, isn't she? She's actually my boss's daughter. Marrying the boss's daughter definitely helps one climb the career ladder faster. Marrying a broke woman like you probably means you're just a regular employee. Too bad. A regular employee? I haven't heard that word in years. What are you trying to prove? Bottom-tier guy marrying a bottom-tier woman. It just means you'll both be broke for the rest of your lives. And you think you deserve to eat in such a fancy restaurant like this? Well, this level of restaurant isn't a problem for us. Yeah, sure, if that's what you think. Just then, a waiter passed by. And my husband pulled out a black card, instructing him to settle the bill. Jim, surprised by the black card, tried not to show it but snorted again. Is that a black card? Showing off a card like that here, you're not used to it. Not used to it? You must have borrowed it from someone. Showing off by flashing the card. But later you'll have to pay back the person who lent you that card, right? I can imagine you're scared to splash the cash in such a place. It's all part of your act. Ha! Funny thing to say. Who would lend their card, I wonder? No matter how naive someone is, they wouldn't lend their card. How would you know that? Jim, you shouldn't say such insulting things. What's insulting? I'm just stating the truth. There's no way you could be wealthy if you married a poor woman like her. My wife is poor, you say? Yes, that's right. Her folks' place is a rundown one-floor home. You know that, right? Or maybe you were too embarrassed to visit her home. So you went to a family restaurant instead? Meeting her parents at a family restaurant for a marriage proposal is unheard of. But for poor people like you, it's probably the norm. Family restaurant, huh? The fact that you thought of that means you must have done your greeting there, right? If you hadn't experienced it yourself, you wouldn't have thought of it. What are you talking about? I'm not short on money. I wouldn't do such a miserable thing. Yet you came up with it. I never would have thought of that. Right, Sandra? What about you? Well, I think I'd like to go to a family restaurant occasionally, but we rarely get the chance. Exactly. What? You're lying. When you were with me, you were happy to go to family restaurants. That's because I had never really been to one before. Oh, I bet. You sure talk big. Coming to such a fancy restaurant just makes you want to act all important. Maybe that's you? It seems like you don't fit in this kind of place. What? You seem out of place, don't you think? There's no way I'm out of place. You're the one who doesn't fit in here. Do you even know who I am? Why would I know you? If you want me to remember you, just become famous. I am well known, though. Well, it's impossible for a regular employee like you to know me, I guess. What? I'm a manager, not a regular employee. Manager? Yes, how about that? Impressive, isn't it? At that moment, the chauffeur arrived, greeted politely, and informed my husband. Sir, your car is ready. Thank you. Huh, what's going on? Oh well, you're probably just the president of some small company. I work for a major corporation, the Holmes Group, and I'm a manager there. Oh, you're still just a manager? Excuse me. You consider yourself top tier. But staying as a manager at your age won't bring any advancement. What, this man works at our company? Yes, he's been with our company for a long time. What do you mean our company? You talk big, but you're just an office lady from a small company. That's right, I don't have kids or any reason to quit my job. But. So, you can't have kids? I was right, you can't have kids. Something's wrong with you. Hey, there's a line to how rude you can be. Sandra is perfectly fine. If she's fine, why can't she get pregnant? Women are supposed to have kids. I don't need to explain that to you. You can't say it because it would prove there's something wrong with her. This man is hopeless. Yes, so bad it's beyond saving. This man's name is Jim Stone. Yes, I understand. He's fired. Sandra, please contact HR. Okay. What? What are you saying? Trying to shock me with that? What company's president are you, thinking you can fool me with such an obvious act? Are you stupid? Jim, my husband is the president of the Holmes Group. What? That can't be. However, the driver, with a look of pity, nodded as he looked at Jim. What, seriously? Is he really our president? Yes, and I am his wife and the vice president of our company. What? That's ridiculous. How could Sandra from a poor family end up as vice president? With just a high school diploma? Such things don't matter. Whether someone graduated from high school or college doesn't determine their worth. That's ridiculous. I will never forgive anyone who insults my wife. No, there's a union, yes, there is a union. The union will protect us employees. You're a manager, right? Managers are not union members. So, you are not protected by the union. Didn't you know that? Seriously. Well, you better brace yourself. Since you insulted my wife, you must face the consequences. Oh no. Jim had a stunned look on his face, but my husband didn't care and asked me if we should go. Then, we left the table. That night, Perhaps bothered by the afternoon's events, Jim called. His attitude was completely different from his arrogance earlier. Sandra, it's been a while. What do you mean? We already had a talk this afternoon, Jim. Ah, yes. What can I do for you? Your dismissal hasn't been issued yet. Ah, you guys were just joking, right? Huh? What do you mean? About you being the vice president and your husband being the president. No, they're all true. I'm surprised you don't know who your own company's president and vice president are. Why would you be the vice president, though? Because the best way I can help my husband is from the vice president's position. No. But it's strange. Why would a high school graduate be the vice president? It's not strange at all. I only graduated high school because I wanted to start working early. But after we separated, I acquired a college degree. Huh, really? Yes, there are schools you can do from home. So, you really are the president's wife? Yes. How did you manage to marry the president? When did you get married? We got married after I divorced you. I met the president soon after, and we dated for about 2 years before getting married. Why would the president take an interest in someone like you? Stop being so rude. Oh, sorry. Connections are mysterious, aren't they? I just happened to meet the president. Even so, why would he marry someone broke like you? Is he a philanthropist? No one marries for charity. If he's not a philanthropist, did he marry you to make you his slave? It's odd otherwise. Maybe today you got lucky to be taken to a fancy restaurant. But usually you must be having plain, poor meals, right? And living a difficult life where you can't even buy what you like, am I right? Why would you think that? That's not true at all. You're the only one who would do such a thing. There's no way you could marry such a rich man. Why do you think so? Rich people have connections with politicians and other wealthy people. If a poorly raised woman like you shows up at their parties, it would embarrass the president. Or maybe he lets his mistress attend those instead. You're making wild assumptions. If you keep looking down on me like this, you'll truly regret it. I'm just concerned for you. A woman with a poor upbringing like you marrying a rich man like the president will only suffer. A regular employee's husband would suit you better. Marrying someone richer than me. You must be a foolish woman who can't see ahead. Who's the fool here? If you called just to say that, I'm hanging up. No, wait. I'm not trying to look down on you. It's just true that you come from poverty, that can't be helped. Thinking I'm looking down on you for that is completely wrong. You say I come from a poor family, but my father is wealthy. Your family is poorer than mine. I didn't say it back then because of your pride. Your family home isn't even half the size of mine. Your father is just a department head, and you're still just a manager. That's not true. When I proposed to you, you were living in a small single-story house. That was because we were renovating our home then. We had stored all our belongings elsewhere. It was just a temporary residence, no need to move to a big house, my mother said. That can't be true. You don't have to believe it, but since the renovation is finished. Even if you say you want to visit my parents at home, you've stubbornly refused to go again. I couldn't tell you the truth. Who would visit such a poor, run-down house? You really are hopeless. Then, I'll send you a picture. This is my family home. You'll see from the picture. The photo I sent was of a large mansion. That's my house. I lived there for a while after our divorce. What? That can't be true. It's true. If this is true, then why were you working as an office lady in a small company? If you're so rich, you wouldn't need to work. And if you did work, wouldn't it be at a large corporation? Indeed, my father is the president of a major company. That company was a new one he started. When it was time to decide who would be the president, it was decided that my brother would take the role. So, I volunteered to handle the administrative work. Now, that company has advanced to the top of the industry. Is that true? Were you really so rich? Yes, this is the truth. This is the real me that you used to look down on. So, that's why you could marry the president? That's not it. I met the president because we shared the same hobbies. We met through our hobbies and hit it off. He didn't know I was the daughter of a wealthy family. And I didn't know he was the president. So, you are at the company where I work because of that? How long have you been at that company? I joined the company right after our divorce. I had a connection by chance. Why? When you were with me, you were a clerk at your brother's company. And after we divorced, you changed jobs? That's right. My brother's company has grown so much. And he told me it was time to do what I love. So I thought I might as well pursue what I've always wanted to do. Then, just as a senior position became vacant, they headhunted me. But at that stage, I still had no acquaintance with the president. He was still someone high above. I don't understand. How can you have connections like that? So, rich people just connect with other rich people? That's why I'm saying those things don't matter. Why do you think like that? It's because of that mindset that you're still just a manager. I wonder why your wife hasn't gotten tired of you yet. She can't get tired of me. I'm supporting her. Keep it up with that attitude, and you'll get what's coming to you. Anyway, that's the situation, so stop belittling me already. I wasn't trying to belittle you. I really thought you were poor. About that dismissal you mentioned this afternoon. Oh, yes, your dismissal. After all the mocking you did, it's only natural you'd be dismissed. That would make me in a tough spot. Can you talk to the president so I don't get fired? What? You were just mocking me tremendously, and yet you ask not to be dismissed? That's impossible, you know. I have nothing but resentment towards you. Why? The fact that you don't think you're resented is truly astonishing. What have I done to you? There's too much to even remember, it's that much. I bet your wife thinks the same as me. Why don't you ask her what she really thinks? Though I doubt she'll tell you. I only said those things because I thought you were poor. Why do you think I'm mocking you when I'm just being honest? Once words are spoken, they can't be taken back, you know? You should understand that as an adult. I do understand that. Then you should understand why you're being dismissed, right? No, I don't understand at all. Please, I'll be in trouble if I'm dismissed. If it were just about this afternoon, the president might have overlooked it. But then you had to call and ask why this and why that. My husband is here now, frowning. He really thinks you're hopeless. Maybe you should just give up, there's no saving you. No. If the president is right there, why can't you just say so? It's only natural for a husband and wife to be together. Besides, you didn't ask if someone was with me, did you? That's true, but you've poured gasoline on your own fire. You mocked not just me, but my parents and my husband too. Look, I didn't think you'd get this angry. Please forgive me. If I had known you were a wealthy lady, I wouldn't have said such mocking things. I won't say them again, please forgive me. Just give up. I think your dismissal order will come down tomorrow. Wait, please. Jim's voice echoed on the other end of the phone, but I hung up and looked at my husband. The next day, Jim came to the president's office. His face was all white, with dark circles under his eyes. And he seemed to be in a really bad condition. I was in a meeting with my husband, the president, about business matters. But I was startled by Jim's appearance. Jim, what's wrong? I'm very sorry. Jim apologized as he sat down on the spot. Jim, what are you doing? Please, just don't fire me. What do you mean? Of course, the president knew about yesterday's conversation. He had guessed from my responses during the call. And I had detailed Jim's remarks after hanging up. Therefore, his impression of Jim was very poor, and his anger was greater than mine. I am truly sorry again. I didn't know your wife was from a wealthy family. I think she is a perfect match for the president's wife. I also heard she graduated from university, even if it was through correspondence. She's a hard worker, a far cry from my own wife. So you decided on her as your wife, and then you got rid of her, right? What? Jim looked up at the president, wondering how he knew such a thing. Of course, I've told my husband everything. We're married, after all. Or do you and your wife not talk about your pasts? No, it's not like that, but that was a long time ago. I was young then. I thought Sandra was just a poor man's daughter. So I thought it was okay to have a mistress. How does it come to that? Is that why you think it's okay to commit sexual harassment or power harassment? What do you mean? Don't tell me you haven't done it? There are complaints from your female coworkers. They say if our company doesn't handle it, they'll go to the police. Our company was just discussing what to do about it. When your disrespectful remarks came yesterday. It's really hopeless, isn't it? That's right. I wouldn't have thought you were actually harassing or bullying. But watching you yesterday, it seemed all too true. You don't even regard women as people, do you? You think they're below you. No, I never, even if that were true, firing me would be too harsh. Please, show some mercy. Well, indeed, you have a family. If you were fired, you wouldn't be the only one in trouble. That's right. Exactly. My husband smirked and looked at me. So, what do you think, Sandra? How about sending Jim to our Ohio branch? Wait, what? The Ohio branch is in a region with very few people, practically unsustainable as a company. The former president, who came from that town, established the branch there to help the local people. But it's a lonely place with just one employee. The previous employee reportedly went mad from the loneliness. We want you to turn that branch around in 3 years. If you can do that, we'll bring you back here. Of course, if you can't, you'll spend your retirement in Ohio. Thank you. I appreciate it. Under the guise of the president's mercy, Jim set off for the Ohio branch. But both myself and my husband knew it was an impossible task. Having to work tirelessly alone for the small number of town residents. It was obvious that there wouldn't be any profit to be made. Unaware of this, Jim moved to the branch all motivated. His transfer was with his mistress who had been his wife. But surely she wouldn't be satisfied with just the cold and nothing else there. And eventually, she reached her limit. His salary plummeted, and despite being the branch manager in name, his pay was minimal, leading his wife to start yelling. This resulted in daily arguments. And although he boasted that if he turned things around in 3 years, He could return to the head office. His city-bred wife couldn't believe his words. She left the divorce papers and went back to the city. Jim tried his best for a year, but no matter how hard he worked, the population wouldn't increase and no profits would come. Eventually, he realized that no amount of effort here would change anything, and one day submitted his resignation. After leaving the company on his own terms, Jim contacted his wife, but by then, she had found someone new. Jim was not only ignored by her but was beaten up by her new man, and ended up in the hospital. After being discharged, Jim looked for a job, but at his age, he found nothing, and life became harder for him. He lived in a shabby, run-down apartment, and the only job he could find was as a nighttime store clerk. The man who had once boasted of graduating from a prestigious university now stood alone in a store at night. As for me, I continued to be protected by my kind husband, enjoying another wonderful date this month. Marrying him changed my life so much. I'm grateful that Jim and I divorced.